With the 2024 DGPT Tour wrapped up, it is time to look at who had the best MPO season. Some of the picks for this list were no-brainers, but a few placements might come as a big surprise. So sit back, enjoy as we count down the top 10 MPO players for 2024. Hey everyone, Calvinheimberg here, back with another Disc Golf Pro Tour video. Today I will be giving you my top 10 MPO players from 2024. There was a lot to look at when making these rankings, and a lot of players who I considered adding to the list. I looked up total wins, podiums, and top 10s, along with their finish in the DGPT point standings. I also looked at how these players performed at the biggest events such as the 4 majors. Finally, I did factor in head-to-head records, and it was especially useful in cases where the stats were very similar between two players. After reviewing all of these factors, I feel confident I have put together a solid top 10 list. Now, before I jump into the countdown, just want to give a quick shout out to StatMando, which I use to help find these stats easily. They have some really cool statistics on their website, which I will link below, so be sure to check them out. All right, let's get into our top 10. Number 10, Joseph Anderson. Joey Buckets really took 2024 by storm by making lead card in the very first event of the season. Now, we have seen some players pop up on the scene and have solid tournaments and then just fall off in the end. But that was not the case with Joseph Anderson. He would have 7 top 10 finishes, including 2 podiums. He also finished 11th in the point standings, and what really helped him get to the top 10 was his win at the LWS Open at Idlewild. The only thing Joey Buckets needed to be higher on this list was just a bit more consistency, but going from a player that only a few people knew about to a top 10 player of 2024 is a really impressive jump and a great season for Joseph Anderson. Number 9, Paul McBeth. Now, this is probably a disappointing placement for Paul, but honestly, as I was looking through the stats, I was really surprised with how good Paul's season was. Although he did not get that Elite Series win this year, he had 11 top 10s, including 3 top 10s at majors. This also included 5 podium finishes. His most impressive moments this year was his 3rd place finish at European Open, and his runner-up finish at MVP, where he was just a James Proctor Circle 2 miss away from having a chance to win. Even without that win, Paul was able to get 6th in the DGPT point standings, really setting up an underrated season for the 6-time world champion. Number 8, Ezra Robinson. This was a difficult choice choosing Ezra over Paul for 2024, as their stats were fairly close. Ezra had 9 top 10s and 4 podium finishes. Ezra was also in the running at so many events this year, most notably at Champions Cup, where he was on the lead card on the final day and finished 3rd place. It is also important to note that he finished 7th in the DGPT point standings. The biggest kicker for me in putting Ezra above Paul is that Ezra beat Paul in the head-to-head series. This shows that Ezra had a really solid season and honestly was 1 win away from really moving up this list. Number 7, James Proctor. Now, James Proctor finished worse in points compared to Paul and Ezra at 13th, and also lost the head-to-head between Ezra and tied the head-to-head with Paul. But what he did, which held a little bit more weight in my opinion, was he had wins. James had 2 Elite Series victories in 2024, the Swedish Open in Europe, which yes, didn't have a full strength of field, but he also won the MVP Open, which had a very stacked field. He also gave us one of the most incredible moments of the season, hitting that huge Circle 2 putt to secure the deal. Even though he wasn't nearly as consistent as he was in 2023, he still had 4 top 10s and 3 podiums, earning his spot at number 7 on this list. Number 6, Nicholas Antila. Antila had a phenomenal year, finally getting his Elite Series victory. In fact, he was able to get 2 on the year, winning the Turku Open, and of course, that awesome victory at Open at Austin where he had to hit a huge putt to get the victory. Another thing to note is he did very well at the majors, finishing 7th at USDGC, 6th at European Open, and runner-up finishes at Champions Cup and the PDGA World Championships. In total, Nicholas had 13 top 10s and 6 podium finishes. He also finished 3rd in the DGPT points, really upgrading his status from last year. Now on to the top 5, we have Ezra Robinson in 5th. Now, Isaac didn't have the most impressive season to start, but he really turned it around at the latter part of the year. To my surprise, he would finish the season with 12 top 10s, 3 podium finishes, and he would be 5th in the Pro Tour point standings. Most importantly, he won this year's World Championship, and he also did it in dominating fashion. He also had solid finishes at the other majors. He had top 5s at both European Open and USDGC, showing that he plays well when the stakes are at the highest. I think if Isaac would have had a more complete, consistent season, he could have definitely made my top 3, but 5th is certainly something he can be proud of. Number 4, Calvinheimberg. Last year, Calvin was the clear number 1 with so many top finishes. This year, unfortunately, he was not able to keep up with that same consistency. With injuries to start the year and the rise of some of the younger talent, it was much harder for Calvin to keep up with those top placements. Regardless, he was still able to get 2 Elite Series wins at both the Dynamic Disc Open and OTB Open. Calvin also had 7 podiums, 14 top 10s, and finished 4th in the Pro Tour points. And although he wasn't near the podium every single event, he had one big feat that really proved he's still consistent, and that is he did not miss cash at all in 2024, continuing his streak. If Calvin can heal his elbow injury, we might see his return to dominance in 2025. Number 3, Anthony Barella. AB had a breakout year in 2024, especially after he got his first Elite Series win in the very first event of the season. After this hot start, he would then take down Texas State and Jonesboro, which immediately had him in the conversation of Player of the Year. In total, he would have 4 Elite Series wins this year, including 5 podium finishes. He also totaled 11 top 10s and finished 8th in the Pro Tour standings. Now you're probably wondering, how could somebody with 4 wins get 8th in the point standings? And that is because Barella really slowed down at the end of the year with a few finishes outside of the top 40. This kept him from getting 2nd on the list, but regardless, Anthony had an amazing 2024 and deserving of making it into the top 3. Now before we take a look at the top 2 players from 2024, I want to get to some honorable mentions. First, we had Chris Dickerson, who we didn't see on coverage as much as we've seen in the past, but he quietly put together a solid season, finishing 9th in points, and in 16 events played, he cashed all 16 times. He also added 8 top 10s and 2 podium finishes. Next is Kyle Klein, who had a very hot start to the season, being in contention in the first few events, but ran into some injury issues mid-season. He still finished 10th in points and had 9 top 10s with 2 podiums. Simon Lizotte was able to get a win this year, winning the Music City Open again, which was almost enough for him to make the top 10, but with only 5 top 10s this year, it was really hard to put him above some of the other players on this list. Finally, it feels wrong not to include a major winner in the top 10, but Andrew Presnell just didn't quite have the resume to make the list. Regardless, I had to give him a huge shout out after that amazing win at Champions Cup. Alright, back to the countdown, we have Ricky Wyscoki at number 2. Wyscoki had a year of near wins. He was the final boss of 2024 as Barella had to defeat him at chess.com to get his first win, and the number 1 player, which we'll look at in a second, had to constantly battle him to get most of his victories. Ricky seemed to always be making a push on the final day, and it really showed in the stats as he had 17 top 10s out of 21 events he played. This also includes an incredible 12 podiums, and he managed to finish 2nd at the Tour Championship. On top of all this, he managed to get 3 wins and had a 2nd place finish at the major European Open. Now, in a normal year, this probably would have earned him Player of the Year, but this year there was another player that played on a completely different level than the rest of the field, and that was our number 1 player, Gannon Buhr. Gannon was the clear number 1 in the 2024 season. He had 6 Elite Series wins, 2 major victories at both European Open and USDGC. He also was the DGPT points leader and the winner of the DGPT championship. A lot of his wins were decisive with multiple strokes between him and the rest of the field. Especially during the second half of the season, you just expected Gannon to win every single tournament. We haven't really seen this sort of dominance in the last few seasons, and he really took 2024 by storm. Overall, he had 22 top 10s out of 23 events played, which is absolutely insane. Also, this includes 12 podiums. Finally, he broke the single season earnings record, earning over $200,000. Now, some have claimed that this is the best season of all time. I won't be getting into that debate this video, but if your season is being examined among the greats, then you know you had one incredible year. And that is why Gannon has earned his spot as the number 1 player in 2024. So this was my top 10 MPO players of the 2024 season. Let me know in the comments who your top 10 players were this year. Now stay tuned, I will be making a top 10 FPO players in 2024 video next, so be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss when that video releases. Also, be sure to check out my complete MPO season recap in the video link on the screen. I'm Hale, thank you so much for watching this video, have a good one.